Hello and welcome to Rainy Noir Tales, where every shadow hides a story, every drop of rain carries a secret, and every night takes you deeper into the heart of the storm. The Vanishing Composer. The rain came down in relentless sheets, cascading off the edges of the cobblestone streets and pooling in the gutters. Detective Nathan Monroe adjusted his fedora, droplets clinging to its brim like secrets refusing to let go. He had seen his share of mysteries in the city, murders, betrayals, missing persons, but nothing quite like this. They called him the Maestro Alexander Carter. A reclusive genius who composed symphonies that seemed to pluck at the strings of the universe itself. His music carried an otherworldly quality, drawing packed concert halls and whispers of something almost divine. But now the maestro was gone. Vanished without a trace on a storm-drenched night, leaving only fragments of his final composition scattered across his music room. Nathan stood in the dimly lit study of Carter's sprawling estate. The room was a portrait of chaos, papers strewn across the piano, a shattered ink bottle bleeding onto the parquet floor, and the faint scent of cigar smoke lingering in the damp air. The rain tapped against the tall windows as if impatient for answers. His client, the city's cultural minister, wrung his hands nervously. This isn't just a disappearance, detective. It's sabotage. His new symphony was set to premiere in 3 weeks. It was meant to put our city on the map. Nathan didn't need reminding. He had heard rumors that Carter's work was more than music. It was said to encode messages, secrets from a bygone era. But Nathan didn't deal in rumors. He dealt in facts. The first clue lay in a corner of the room, a torn scrap of sheet music. The notes formed an odd, jarring sequence, unlike the maestro's usual fluid compositions. Nathan pocketed it carefully and turned his attention to the window. It was slightly ajar, the lock forced. Whoever came here wasn't just after Carter. They wanted his music. The investigation led Nathan through the rain-slicked streets of the city, from the shadowy cafes where artists nursed their existential woes to an abandoned opera house where echoes of the past refused to fade. Each step unspooled a thread connecting Carter's compositions to a hidden network, one that traded in secrets as easily as symphonies. And then there was the figure. Nathan had spotted him twice now. A man in a dark overcoat, always a step ahead, always watching. Who was he? A rival? An accomplice? Or something more sinister? The rain never stopped as Nathan pieced together the puzzle. The notes from the torn sheet music aligned with landmarks across the city. Each location revealed a fragment of the maestro's final work and the echoes of a long-buried conspiracy. With every discovery, the melody grew clearer, hauntingly beautiful but tinged with danger. As the finale approached, Nathan realized this wasn't just about the maestro. It was about power, deception, and the lengths people would go to silence a truth wrapped in music. The city hadn't seen the sun in days. It was as if the rain itself had become a character in the story, an accomplice to the secrets being unearthed. Detective Nathan Monroe found himself back where it all began, Alexander Carter's music room. The chaos of the scene had been cataloged, the scraps of sheet music bagged and sent to analysts. But something about the room still whispered to him, as though it held onto the final notes of a melody only he could hear. He paced slowly, the floorboards creaking under his weight. His eyes fell on the piano, a gleaming relic now layered with a thin coat of dust. Carter's music had lived and breathed through this instrument. Nathan's fingers itched to press a key, to hear the resonance of a man's genius. Instead, his hand traced the edge of the piano lid, his mind piecing together fragments of the case. The torn sheet music had led him to a series of landmarks, each more peculiar than the last. A decrepit old theater, its faded grandeur hiding a basement filled with forgotten treasures. A library so silent it felt like time itself had stopped, where a hidden ledger documented patrons long dead. And most unsettling, a private club where whispers of coded symphonies and hidden messages were traded like currency. But it was the last clue that had brought him here again. A single note scribbled in Carter's frantic handwriting. The heart of the city holds the truth. Nathan muttered the phrase under his breath, over and over, as though trying to solve an incantation. Then his eyes snapped to the wall opposite the piano. A painting hung there, inconspicuous in its placement. It depicted the city skyline, but what caught Nathan's attention was the center. A clock tower, its face faintly glowing under the artist's meticulous brushwork. The heart of the city, Nathan repeated, his voice barely a whisper. The clock tower was a relic much like Carter himself. It stood in the center of downtown, its chimes once marking the passage of time for the entire city. Now it was abandoned, left to decay as progress moved on without it. Nathan grabbed his coat, his mind racing with possibilities. If Carter had left a message, or if someone wanted it hidden, that tower was the place to start. The climb to the tower was as treacherous as the case itself. The rain had turned the narrow stairwell into a slick path of danger, each step threatening to send Nathan tumbling into the abyss. He carried a flashlight, its weak beams slicing through the darkness, illuminating dust motes and rusted gears. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and forgotten time. When he reached the top, the view was staggering. The city stretched out before him, a sea of lights shimmering in the rain. But Nathan wasn't here for the view. His attention was on the clock mechanism itself, a massive, intricate structure of gears and levers. And there, wedged between the machinery, was a folder. Its edges were damp, but its contents were intact. Nathan opened it with careful hands. Inside were pages of sheet music, the handwriting unmistakably Carter's. But this was no ordinary symphony. The notes formed patterns, codes that Nathan recognized as coordinates. Carter hadn't been composing music, he'd been mapping something. And the implications were staggering. The final page was a letter, addressed to no one but written with urgency. If you found this, you're closer to the truth than they ever wanted you to be. If you found this, you're closer to the truth than they ever wanted you to be. The symphony is more than music. It's a key. Use it wisely, or everything we've worked for will be lost. Trust no one. The rain intensified outside, hammering against the tower like an impatient interrogator. Nathan stood there, the weight of the discovery pressing down on him. The case had shifted once again. This was no longer just about a missing composer. It was about unlocking a secret that could reshape everything Nathan thought he knew about the city and its shadows. The rain had slowed to a whisper, but the city hadn't rested. Nathan Monroe stood in the clock tower, the damp folder in his hands and a dozen questions echoing through his mind. The letter's warning was clear: trust no one. Yet someone out there already knew what he had uncovered, and they wouldn't let it lie. Descending the tower felt like emerging from another world. The streets below glistened like black glass, illuminated by neon signs that buzzed faintly in the downpour's aftermath. Nathan tucked the folder inside his coat, keeping it close. There was one person in the city who might help him decode Carter's symphony without asking too many questions. The shop smelled of old paper and ink, a relic of a world that no longer valued such things. Amelia Hart looked up from behind the counter, her sharp eyes narrowing as Nathan stepped inside. She was a musicologist turned antique dealer, someone who knew more about the city's history than most cared to learn. She also had a knack for keeping secrets. "You're soaking wet," she remarked, reaching for a towel she kept near the radiator. "I'd tell you to watch where you step, but something tells me trouble's already found you." Nathan offered a faint smirk, shaking the rain off his hat. "Trouble's been following me for days, Amelia. I need your eyes on something." She arched a brow, curiosity flickering across her face. "What kind of something?" He pulled out the folder, careful not to damage the fragile pages, and spread Carter's sheet music across the counter. Amelia leaned over, her fingers tracing the intricate patterns. The longer she studied it, the deeper her frown grew. "This isn't just a symphony," she said, her voice low. "It's a map, maybe even a sequence. These notes repeat in ways that don't belong in a traditional composition." Her gaze shifted to Nathan. "Do you know what this means?" "Not yet," he admitted, "but Carter thought it was worth his life. I found this at the clock tower." Amelia's face paled. "The clock tower? That place hasn't been safe since," she cut herself off, shaking her head. "Look, Nathan, if this is what I think it is, you're in way over your head. People have killed for less." He leaned in, his voice steady. "Then help me stay ahead of them. What do these notes lead to?" She hesitated, glancing toward the window as though expecting someone to appear. Finally, she whispered, "There's a legend, a hidden archive beneath the city built before the first skyscrapers. It's said to hold everything the city's founders wanted to keep buried. If these notes align with landmarks, they might lead you there." Nathan exhaled slowly, the weight of the revelation settling in. "And what happens if I find it?" "Depends on what's inside," Amelia said, her tone grim. "But if Carter was trying to protect it, you'd better be prepared for whoever didn't want him to." As Nathan stepped back into the night, the rain had begun again, a cold, steady rhythm that masked the sound of footsteps in the distance. He turned instinctively, catching a shadow darting into an alley. He wasn't alone, and whoever was watching him wasn't here to lend a hand. The chase had begun, and the answers lay somewhere deep beneath the city, buried in the shadows of a past that refused to stay silent. The rain fell in rhythmic waves, a soundtrack to the city's unease. Nathan Monroe tightened his grip on the folder as he navigated the labyrinthine streets, his senses heightened. He knew he was being followed. The shadow from the alley hadn't been a coincidence. Whoever was tailing him wasn't just curious, they were hunting him. The coordinates on Carter's sheet music led Nathan to an inconspicuous entrance tucked behind an abandoned textile factory. The door was rusted, its hinges stiff from years of neglect, but it yielded with a firm push. Inside, the air was thick with must and mystery. The staircase spiraled downward, deeper and deeper into the earth. Nathan's flashlight illuminated patches of graffiti, old symbols etched into the walls, some of which he recognized from Carter's sheet music, a language of secrets. He continued cautiously, every creak of the steps sending echoes through the passage. At the bottom was an enormous chamber, its walls lined with shelves of books, documents, and relics. This was the archive Amelia had mentioned, a hidden repository of the city's most guarded truths. Nathan's heart raced. If Carter's symphony had been a key to this place, then the secrets here were far more valuable than music. Nathan's flashlight beam swept across the room, landing on a desk piled with yellowed papers. One document caught his attention. It bore the city's official seal, along with Carter's name. As he read, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Carter's symphony wasn't just a map, it was a manifesto. His music had been inspired by the city's history, but it also revealed the corruption woven into its foundations. The city's most powerful figures had conspired to suppress Carter's findings, fearing that exposing the truth would crumble their empires. But Carter hadn't worked alone. The documents revealed a network of allies, each contributing to the symphony in their own way: historians, activists, musicians. Together, they had created a coded masterpiece, a call to action hidden within melodies. A noise jolted Nathan from his thoughts, a metallic clang, followed by hurried footsteps. His flashlight flickered as he turned, but he was too late. A figure emerged from the shadows, their face obscured by a hood, holding a gun leveled at him. "Leave the folder," the figure said, their voice steady and cold. "And walk away." Nathan's mind raced. Whoever this was didn't just want the folder, they wanted to keep the archive's secrets buried forever. But Nathan wasn't the type to walk away, especially not with Carter's legacy hanging in the balance. "I don't think you understand," Nathan said, his voice calm despite the tension. "This folder isn't just sheet music. It's the truth, the kind that doesn't stay buried." The figure hesitated, their grip on the gun faltering for just a moment. Nathan seized the opportunity, swinging the flashlight in a sharp arc. The impact sent the gun clattering to the floor, and Nathan lunged forward, pinning the intruder against a shelf. "Who sent you?" he demanded, his voice fierce. "Who sent you?" he demanded, his voice fierce. But the figure twisted free and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Nathan alone with Carter's symphony and the weight of what he had uncovered. Nathan knew this was far from over. The archive had answers, but it also had dangers. Carter's symphony would be his guide, a melody that held the keys to exposing the city's corruption and honoring the maestro's legacy. But as the rain battered the world above, Nathan realized he couldn't do it alone. He'd need allies, and he'd need to play the maestro's symphony with precision. The rain carved its relentless path through the city's streets, masking the echoes of Nathan Monroe's hurried footsteps. With Carter's symphony tucked safely inside his coat, Nathan felt the weight of each step. This was no longer a case but a battle. The darkness seemed to follow him, deeper and more insidious with every discovery. Nathan made his way to his office, a modest space tucked between a shuttered tailor shop and an all-night diner that smelled perpetually of burnt coffee. He locked the door behind him, drew the blinds, and spread the sheet music across his desk. The symphony was alive, its notes pulsing with a story that had yet to be fully understood. Amelia's warning echoed in his mind. People have killed for less. It was more than a threat, it was a promise that danger was closing in. He began piecing together Carter's coded melodies, guided by the landmarks referenced in the symphony. Each segment revealed more than music, it unveiled a timeline, a history the city's elite had tried desperately to erase. Carter had uncovered a web of corruption tied to the founding of the city itself. The very institutions that claimed to serve the public had been built on exploitation, lies, and bloodshed. But the final sequence of notes remained a mystery, a series of crescendos that seemed to demand something beyond decoding, perhaps a performance. Nathan scribbled notes of his own, cross-referencing the symphony with the documents he'd found in the archive. Every clue led to one undeniable truth: the city had been founded on secrets too dangerous to be revealed. And those in power would do anything to keep them hidden. The knock on the office door was soft but deliberate. Nathan froze, his hand instinctively moving to the revolver hidden in his drawer. "Who's there?" he called, his voice steady despite the tension. "It's Amelia," came the reply. He opened the door cautiously, his instincts still sharp. Amelia stepped inside, her raincoat glistening and her expression grave. "You weren't followed, were you?" he asked, locking the door behind her. "If I was, we'll know soon enough," she replied, pulling a folder from her bag. "I dug deeper into Carter's network. There's something you need to see." Nathan cleared space on his desk as Amelia spread out photographs, letters, and sketches, pieces of a puzzle Carter had been assembling for years. One photograph showed Carter at the piano, surrounded by individuals Nathan recognized from the documents in the archive. His allies, Amelia explained. They helped him create the symphony, but some of them disappeared years ago. "I think Carter knew he was next." Nathan studied the faces in the photograph, memorizing every detail. If Carter's symphony is the key, then these people might be the lock or the ones who know how to open it. Amelia nodded. "But finding them won't be easy. The people who erased Carter's allies won't hesitate to come after you." Nathan leaned back in his chair, the symphony's notes playing in his mind like an unfinished melody. "They can come," he said, his voice resolute. "But this city deserves to know the truth, even if it takes tearing it apart." Outside, the rain intensified, a storm brewing not just in the sky, but in the shadows of the city. Nathan and Amelia had begun a fight they couldn't walk away from, a fight for Carter's legacy and the soul of the city itself. The storm thundered on, each raindrop slicing through the city like shards of silver. Detective Nathan Monroe knew he was running out of time. Carter's symphony was more than a puzzle, it was a ticking clock counting down to an inevitable confrontation with forces far beyond his control. Nathan and Amelia spent the night poring over the network Carter had built. Each name was a thread in a tapestry of resistance, each landmark a piece of the city's buried history. But the final crescendo of Carter's symphony remained elusive, an unanswered question that gnawed at Nathan's mind. By dawn, the streets shimmered under the dim light of a rising sun. Nathan packed the folder carefully, his revolver tucked securely at his side. "I need to find Carter's allies," he said, his voice firm. "If the symphony is the key, they'll know how to open the door." Amelia hesitated. "You're walking into the lion's den, Nathan. These people are in hiding for a reason. If you find them, you'll be dragging them into a fight they may not be ready for." Nathan paused, the weight of her words settling over him. If they helped Carter create this, they knew the risks. "They're the only ones who can help me now." The first stop was a forgotten bookstore, its windows boarded up and its sign barely legible. Nathan stepped inside, his footsteps echoing through the dust-covered aisles. A woman emerged from the back, her face lined with age but her eyes sharp with recognition. "You're not here for books," she said, her voice steady. "What do you want?" Nathan placed the folder on the counter, spreading out Carter's symphony. "Alexander Carter trusted you. He built this with you and your allies. Now he's gone, and I need to know how to finish what he started." She studied the sheet music, her hands trembling as they traced the notes. He said the symphony was his greatest work, a masterpiece that could save the city or destroy it. But the final sequence, we never finished it. Nathan leaned in, his voice firm. "Tell me what you know." From the bookstore to the abandoned opera house, Nathan followed the trail of Carter's allies. Each encounter brought him closer to understanding the symphony's purpose, but it also deepened the danger. Carter hadn't just built a network, he'd built a movement, a call to action hidden within the notes of his music. And as Nathan pieced together the final sequence, he realized the truth. The symphony wasn't just a map or a manifesto, it was a key to exposing the city's darkest secrets. But to play it, he'd need to confront the very forces that had silenced Carter and his allies. By nightfall, Nathan stood before the concert hall where Carter's symphony was meant to premiere. The rain fell harder than ever, a relentless rhythm that seemed to echo the urgency of the moment. Inside, the stage was empty, but the weight of history hung heavy in the air. Nathan placed the sheet music on the piano, his hands trembling as he prepared to play the maestro's final masterpiece. But before he could strike the first chord, the sound of footsteps filled the hall. He turned, his revolver drawn, and faced the figures emerging from the shadows. They weren't here to listen, they were here to silence the symphony forever. The confrontation loomed, the symphony's final notes waiting to be played. The city's future hung in the balance, and Nathan knew there was no turning back. The concert hall loomed around Nathan Monroe like a cathedral of secrets, its vaulted ceilings echoing the muffled roar of the storm outside. The figures advancing toward him were deliberate, shadowy, their intent unmistakable. They moved like the rain itself, cold, relentless, and inevitable. Nathan gripped his revolver tightly, his free hand hovering protectively near Carter's symphony spread across the piano. "I'm guessing you're not here for the music," he said, his voice cutting through the tense silence. A man stepped forward, his face illuminated briefly by the flicker of a distant lightning strike. He wore a tailored coat, the kind that suggested wealth and influence. "Detective Monroe," the man said, his tone smooth but laced with menace. "You're meddling in affairs far beyond your understanding." Nathan smirked, though his eyes never wavered from the group before him. "Funny thing about understanding, it tends to grow the more you look into it." The man sighed theatrically, gesturing to the others behind him. "You found something that doesn't belong to you. Hand over the symphony and we'll pretend this never happened." Nathan's knuckles whitened around the revolver. "You mean the symphony that reveals your dirty little secrets? The one Carter died trying to protect? I don't think so." The man's expression darkened. "You don't realize what you're playing with. That music isn't just notes on a page. It's power. Power you can't begin to comprehend." Nathan's voice dropped to a growl. "Maybe I don't, but Carter did. And he thought the city deserved to know the truth." The standoff snapped into chaos as one of the figures lunged, the glint of a blade catching the dim light. Nathan fired once, the crack of the gunshot shattering the stillness of the hall. The assailant dropped, clutching his shoulder as he cried out in pain. Nathan dove for cover behind the piano, the sheet music scattering across the stage. Bullets tore through the air, ricocheting off the grand instrument with deafening clangs. The melody of Carter's unfinished symphony seemed to hum in Nathan's mind, urging him forward. Amelia's voice buzzed in his earpiece, a precaution they'd taken earlier in the night. "Nathan, what's going on?" "Just making some new friends," he muttered, peeking out from behind the piano to return fire. "Tell me you've got something for me." "I'm outside, but the storm's wrecking comms," she replied. "I'll do what I can to get in. Don't let them get the symphony." Nathan gritted his teeth, his focus darting between his dwindling cover and the scattered pages of sheet music. He couldn't let Carter's legacy fall into their hands. Summoning every ounce of resolve, he rolled out from behind the piano, snatching the pages and stuffing them into his coat as he sprinted toward the wings of the stage. The storm outside seemed to roar in approval as he barreled through a side door, his pursuers close behind. The backstage corridors were a maze of shadows and whispers, the air thick with tension. Nathan knew the odds were against him, but he also knew the city's survival depended on what he carried. Emerging onto a fire escape, Nathan was greeted by the biting rain and the howl of the wind. The city stretched out before him, a labyrinth of lights and darkness. He could hear his pursuers below, their voices sharp and urgent. Amelia appeared from the alley, her car screeching to a halt at the base of the fire escape. "Get in," she shouted, her voice barely audible over the storm. Nathan clambered down the slippery metal stairs, clutching his prize as though it were his lifeline. He dove into the passenger seat just as another bullet struck the railing above him. "Drive," he barked. Amelia didn't need to be told twice. The tires screeched against the wet pavement as they sped into the night, leaving their attackers behind for now. As they wove through the city's rain-soaked streets, Nathan finally allowed himself a breath. He spread the damp sheet music across his lap, the notes shimmering like a code waiting to be cracked. "What now?" Amelia asked, her knuckles tight on the wheel. Nathan's eyes didn't leave the symphony. We finish it, and then we make sure everyone hears it. The storm outside seemed to agree, the rain pounding harder as if the city itself was waiting for the truth to be revealed. The car sped through the rain-drenched streets, the symphony's fragmented notes await on Nathan Monroe's lap. The melodies felt alive, demanding to be played as if the truth itself was contained within the unfinished score. Beside him, Amelia gripped the wheel, her knuckles white against the stormy chaos outside. "We need a safe place," Nathan said, his voice low but urgent. "Somewhere we can work without being interrupted." Amelia glanced at him, nodding. "There's an old community theater on the south side. It's been abandoned for years, but it's dry, and the acoustics might help us figure out what Carter intended." Nathan frowned. "You think we need to play the symphony to unlock its meaning?" Amelia shook her head. "Not just play it. Feel it. Music isn't just sound, Nathan. It's emotion, resonance. Carter hid his message in the notes, but you won't find it without giving life to the music." The theater was a crumbling relic of another time, its once grand facade now draped in ivy and decay. The rain followed them inside, dripping through cracks in the roof and pooling on the uneven floor. Nathan set the sheet music on a dusty piano near the stage, while Amelia lit a series of lanterns, their warm glow casting flickering shadows across the room. Nathan stared at the symphony, his mind racing. If Carter's allies were right, this isn't just music. It's a map, a call to action. But how do we know what it's pointing to? Amelia stepped behind him, her voice calm but firm. "We play. Start with the first movement. Trust the music." Nathan took a deep breath, his fingers hovering over the keys. He wasn't a pianist, but the notes seemed to guide him, each one flowing into the next like a story unfolding. The music filled the theater, haunting and powerful, each crescendo echoing as if the building itself were alive. As he played, Amelia moved to the center of the room, her eyes scanning the walls and ceiling. "Look for patterns," she murmured, her voice barely audible over the music. And then they saw it. A mural, hidden beneath layers of grime and neglect, began to reveal itself on the theater's back wall. The vibrations from the music had loosened the paint, exposing a vivid depiction of the city's skyline, but with key differences. Symbols and marks appeared where no landmarks existed, as if Carter had mapped an alternate reality onto the city's bones. Amelia gasped. This is the archive's final key. The locations marked here must be sites of hidden truths Carter wanted uncovered. Amelia gasped. This is the archive's final key. The locations marked here must be sites of hidden truths Carter wanted uncovered. Nathan stopped playing, the silence almost deafening after the music's intensity. "And now they know we've found it," he said grimly, nodding toward the theater's entrance. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside, accompanied by the unmistakable click of firearms being readied. Amelia's face paled, but her eyes burned with resolve. "We can't let them destroy this." Nathan stood, his hand instinctively moving to his revolver. "They won't. We fight." The confrontation was inevitable, the truth hanging in the balance. The symphony, the mural, and Carter's legacy were the only weapons they had against the powerful forces closing in. Nathan tightened his grip on his revolver, his gaze steely. "Let's finish this." The footsteps closed in, their rhythm steady and unrelenting. The entrance to the theater creaked under the weight of the intruders, the air tightening as danger stepped closer. Nathan Monroe adjusted his grip on the revolver, his eyes darting to Amelia, who crouched beside the piano. Her trembling hand rested on the edge of the instrument, but her resolve burned brightly. "Stay low," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the storm pounding against the theater's crumbling facade. The door burst open, and 3 figures stormed in, their silhouettes illuminated by the dim lantern light. Their movements were sharp and calculated, professionals who knew exactly what they were here for. Their leader, a tall man with a scar cutting through his jawline, scanned the room with cold efficiency. "Detective Monroe," the leader called out, his voice echoing through the theater. "You've gone through a lot of trouble for something you don't understand. Step out now, and we can end this without bloodshed." Nathan smirked from his cover. "Funny how you assume I don't understand." Nathan smirked from his cover. "Funny how you assume I don't understand. Carter's music, it's a reckoning, isn't it? A story your kind doesn't want told." The man's lips curled into a sneer. "You don't know what you're meddling with. This isn't about truth. It's about control. You can't win this." Nathan peered out from behind the piano, his revolver raised. "If I'm wrong, why are you here with guns?" Before the man could respond, Nathan fired, the crack of the shot ripping through the theater. The bullet struck a lantern, plunging the room into flickering shadows. Chaos erupted as the assailants scrambled, their voices cutting through the dark. Nathan used the confusion to reposition, pulling Amelia with him toward the stage. From the wings of the stage, Nathan whispered urgently, "We need to protect the mural and the symphony. They can't get their hands on either." Amelia nodded, clutching a broken chair leg as an improvised weapon. "I'll distract them. You get the music out of here." Nathan frowned. "No way. We stick together." But before he could stop her, Amelia darted toward the center of the room, her figure illuminated briefly by the flicker of lantern light. "Over here," she shouted, drawing the attacker's attention. The leader barked orders, but the distraction worked. Nathan used the moment to grab the symphony pages and move toward the theater's back exit. The storm greeted him with a howl as he stumbled into the night, the rain obscuring everything but his determination. Amelia's shouts echoed behind him as Nathan sprinted through the alleyways, each step a desperate beat in the symphony's unfinished melody. He didn't want to leave her behind, but she'd bought him the time he needed to protect Carter's legacy. He could only hope she'd find a way out. The mural's symbols lingered in his mind as he ran. Each mark on that wall pointed to locations tied to the city's buried secrets. He knew what he had to do. Follow the map, uncover the truths it held, and bring them to light. Carter's music would be the city's reckoning. But as he rounded a corner, a car screeched to a halt in front of him. The passenger door flew open, and Amelia's voice called out, "Get in!" Soaked and breathless, Nathan dove into the car. "You're insane," he said, his voice half a growl and half a laugh. "Maybe," Amelia replied, gunning the engine. "But if we're going down fighting." The city stretched out before them, its lights blurred by the storm. The symphony rested on Nathan's lap, its secrets still waiting to be fully uncovered. They weren't safe yet, but for the first time, Nathan felt a glimmer of hope. Carter's masterpiece wasn't just music. It was a weapon, and they were going to use it. The rain clung to the windows like a curtain of silver, blurring the city lights as Nathan Monroe and Amelia sped through the labyrinth of soaked streets. Carter's symphony lay spread across Nathan's lap, its notes whispering secrets only half revealed. The old map of landmarks and symbols etched in his memory felt like an unfinished melody, haunting, unresolved. Amelia glanced at him, her knuckles tight around the steering wheel. Where to next? The mural's map had at least 5 locations marked. If Carter's allies left clues at each, we might get what we need to finish this. Nathan nodded, his jaw set. The archive hinted that one of the locations, an old theater in the Red River district, was where Carter first tested the symphony's resonance. If there's any place that holds answers, it'll be there. Amelia hesitated. That area's dangerous. Flooded, abandoned, full of desperate people. If they see us poking around, they'll know we've got something worth protecting, Nathan finished grimly. Doesn't matter. We can't stop now. The theater was a forgotten relic, swallowed by the city's decay. Its faded marquee hung lopsided, spelling out fragments of long-forgotten productions. The storm had left its mark. Puddles of water pooled in the entryway, and the faint scent of mold clung to the air. But as Nathan and Amelia stepped inside, they felt the echo of its former grandeur. Gold-accented pillars stretched toward a vaulted ceiling, and faded murals of celestial figures seemed to watch them with knowing eyes. Nathan moved cautiously, his flashlight slicing through the gloom. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional drip of water from somewhere above. "Keep an eye out for anything out of place," he murmured. If Carter came here, he left something behind. Amelia swept her gaze across the empty rows of seats, her fingers tracing the edges of an old program still lying on one of the chairs. What exactly are we looking for? Another hidden mural? Sheet music? Anything that ties back to the symphony, Nathan said, his voice echoing faintly. He didn't just hide notes, he hid meaning. In the center of the stage, an old piano loomed, its keys yellowed and warped by time. Nathan approached it slowly, his flashlight revealing scratches etched into the wood. They weren't random. They formed patterns, repeating sequences that mirrored Carter's style. "Amelia," Nathan called, gesturing her over. "Look at this." She leaned closer, studying the marks. "They're notes. He scratched them into the piano frame. Nathan traced the sequence with his finger. It's part of the symphony, a piece we haven't seen yet. He must have come here to finish it, but why leave it behind? Amelia frowned. Maybe he ran out of time, or maybe this piece wasn't meant to be played alone. Nathan's mind raced. The scratches, the markings on the mural, the hidden archive, it was all connected. The symphony wasn't just a warning or a map. It was a message to his allies. He knew he wouldn't finish this alone. Before they could decipher more, a sound echoed through the theater. A faint creak, followed by soft footsteps. Nathan's hand shot to his revolver, his eyes scanning the shadows. Amelia stepped back, her breath caught in her throat. "We've been followed," Nathan whispered. "Stay behind me." The theater's eerie silence returned, but it was a silence charged with danger. Figures emerged from the darkness, their shapes silhouetted against the faint glow of a streetlight filtering through the broken doors. The leader stepped forward, the same scarred man who had led the attack at the first theater. "You can't keep running, detective," he said, his voice cold. "The music ends here." The stage was set for a showdown, a final movement in Carter's unfinished masterpiece. The symphony had brought them to the edge of revelation, and now Nathan had to decide: fight to protect the truth, or flee to ensure its survival. The rain outside seemed to drum in anticipation, the city holding its breath for what would come next. The rain swelled to a crescendo outside the abandoned theater, a symphony of nature playing in tandem with the storm brewing within. Nathan Monroe stood at the piano, Carter's sheet music spread before him, while the scarred man and his armed entourage advanced. The dim light flickered as if the building itself was holding its breath. Nathan took a step forward, his revolver clenched tightly in his hand. "This doesn't end the way you think," he said, his voice cutting through the tense silence. The scarred man smirked, his gaze unwavering. "It ends exactly the way it's meant to. Carter's symphony dies here, and so do you." Amelia, crouched near the wings of the stage, held her breath. Her eyes darted between the sheet music and Nathan's face, searching for a solution hidden in the notes. She whispered to herself, "Music doesn't just reveal, it changes." Nathan's hand trembled over the piano keys. He didn't know why, but he felt the symphony itself calling to be played. Carter's final sequence wasn't just a message. It was the culmination of everything. The truth of the city encoded not just in notes, but in sound. He glanced at Amelia. "Cover me." Her jaw tightened as she grabbed the broken chair leg and bolted from her hiding spot. She swung wildly at one of the intruders, disarming him before diving for cover again. Chaos erupted as Nathan struck the first chord, the deep resonance echoing through the room. The scarred man froze, his face twisting in fury. "Stop him," he bellowed. But Nathan didn't stop. Each note unleashed something raw and powerful, resonating not only within the theater but seemingly through the very walls of the city itself. The scarred man's team stumbled as the sound grew, vibrating the ground beneath their feet. Symbols illuminated across the theater walls, glowing faintly as if drawn out by the music's energy. Amelia shouted over the cacophony, "Nathan, it's working. Keep playing." Bullets ricocheted off the piano and struck the stage, but Nathan played on, each crescendo drowning out the chaos around him. Carter's symphony was alive now, pulsing with meaning, a force neither friend nor foe could control. The scarred man lunged forward, desperate to silence the music, but Amelia intercepted him, tackling him to the ground. The final note rang out like a cathedral bell, reverberating through the theater and into the night. For a moment, everything was still. The scarred man lay defeated, his team incapacitated by the symphony's unrelenting force. Nathan rose slowly, the weight of Carter's legacy settling over him. The glowing symbols faded, leaving behind their message etched into the walls, coordinates to sites of the city's buried secrets, evidence of the corruption that had poisoned its foundations. The music had spoken, and now the truth was ready to be revealed. Amelia pulled herself to her feet, wiping blood from her lip. "We did it," she said, her voice trembling with relief. Nathan nodded, his gaze lingering on the sheet music. Carter knew the risk. He knew they'd come after him, but he also knew the power of the truth. In the weeks that followed, the revelations uncovered from Carter's symphony shook the city to its core. The coordinates led to hidden archives, testimonies, and proof of decades-old corruption. The newspapers were filled with stories of Carter's brilliance and sacrifice, the symphony playing across airwaves as a symbol of hope and reckoning. Nathan and Amelia disappeared into the storm's aftermath, their roles fulfilled. They had honored Carter's legacy, exposing the truth and giving the city a chance to rebuild. But they knew their fight wasn't over. Secrets still lingered and new storms waited on the horizon. As the rain finally ceased, the city began to breathe again, its people ready to face the light after years of darkness. And Carter's symphony, his masterpiece, lived on, a testament to the power of music, truth, and resilience. Thank you for stepping into the storm with Rainy Noir Tales. Until next time, may your nights stay shadowed, your streets slick with intrigue, and your stories never end.